I was thinking about my 2014 movies.
I know, right? Because I fucked up.
All right, you got your five?
I'm changing my year to 1946.
What? Why?
Yeah, because there's
Because you
better
don't
movies.
actually like
There's
these?
no there's the movies there I've seen more, so I can like actually comment better on them than
Well, this is
um.
this is going to be short, and you can do 1946 next time, or you could do it whatever you want.
Well, yeah, I can do whatever I want. I'm gonna pick 1946 because you picked 2014. So let's just have like a modern and classic.
Okay, but I'm telling you, I'm going to do this three. I have three parts to this because I have 15 movies. So you can keep doing old years.
I went through the list. 2014 has some fantastic movies in it.
You know what movie it has that I fucking hate? That won Best Picture that year
What?
was Birdman. For
Yeah,
fuck's sakes.
I didn't like Birdman, but you know what? Hey, Green Book won also, and I hated that. So they've been doing some crap with the Best Picture.
Well, if they have a history of doing that. But I saw
Mm-hmm.
Birdman in the theater. Do you remember that movie?
Yeah, that was also one of the what's that single take type films.
Yeah, that was the trick. It was
Yeah,
the
that was
whole
the
thing.
gimmick.
Yeah. But I remember like the movie could be summed up in one scene. There's this one scene where it's Edward Norton, right? He's in that.
Yes,
And then is it Emma Stone?
yes.
And they're like talking, was it like behind the rafters or something in the theater? And I think one of them asked the other like why are we here? Like why are we doing this? And that summed up the movie for me. Like what's the point of this? This movie makes no sense. I don't I'm
What I
completely
say is
disengaged.
always like whenever there's something that doesn't make any sense, like why is Birdman?
Exactly.
Why is La La Land?
But as much as I disliked Birdman, there were 15 movies I loved that year. So I'm going to start with my favorite movies of 2014, part one of three.
And this has three parts because Jake just couldn't get enough of 2014.
And Sydney's going with
1946.
It Was a Very Good Year.
It was, to quote Sinatra.
All right. So I'll start.
Okay.
One of my favorite movies of 2014 is called The Raid 2.
I've never heard of that.
It's either Malaysian or it's Indonesian, and it's a sequel to The Raid. I would argue The Raid 2 is even better. And
so it's like The Godfather 2.
Yes, and it's about a cop who has to go undercover because of crime and mafia and kingpins in Indonesia. But the reason you watch this movie is because it has some of the most incredible, well choreographed, life-threatening stunts and martial arts sequences I have ever seen.
Well, who's in it?
His name is Iko Uwais. He's been in some other American movies, but I think he's known for Raid and Raid 2. And it's like the plot doesn't even matter. They have some of these action sequences are all one take, and it's just unbelievable. Like I can't even imagine how much practice went into them.
Okay.
And these stunts, people were getting hurt. They were nuts. The Raid 2.
Okay, what's next?
You're next.
No, let's stay in the year. Let's not
right.
bounce back and forth.
Also, a movie that I loved and saw in the theater from 2014 was Top 5, starring Chris Rock and Rosario Dawson. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that one.
And Chris Rock sort of plays a version of himself. He's a very successful comedian whose movies are just terrible. And he's made another movie. I think, he's made a serious movie about that slave rebellion in, Haiti. It was the Haiti rebellion. So he makes the serious movie and he's trying to promote it, but like everyone's expecting it to be terrible. And you see like scenes from the movie within the movie, and they're like obviously bad. And he lets Rosario Dawson, who's a reporter, follow him around for a day, just to like do her story about him. And it's called Top 5 because part of the thing they talk about is his like top 5 favorite comedians of all time in the movie. And it's got some amazing cameos from like Jerry Seinfeld to Tracy Morgan, even a small cameo by DMX. It's really funny and it's a really good movie. And it's a really good Chris Rock movie who's known for making really shit movies.
Like the character.
Yes. My third pick is called Eden. It's a French movie that chronicles the rise of electronic dance music through the life of a DJ. And it basically starts when I think he's in high school or college. He begins working as a disc jockey at some club. And like he's a fictional character, but his life intersects with real members of this musical community. Like, for example, he's at a party where he meets the two guys from Daft Punk, like right as they're taking off. And so it goes from when he starts to like when he's sort of middle aged, and it's kind of just about his journey. He doesn't become very successful. He has some close calls with success, but it's just like sort of a life story, and it's a bit of slice of life, and it's French, and I really enjoyed it. And I watched it because it was recommended by the guy who wrote American Psycho.
Bret Easton Ellis.
Yeah, when his podcast used to be free, I'd listen to it, and it was one of his favorite movies. And this isn't a movie I would watch. Bret Easton Ellis, yeah, and I watched it, and I liked it a lot.
Okay, I've never heard of that one.
Number 4 is going to be Obvious Child with Jenny Slate. It's a little indie comedy where she has to navigate the murky waters of adulthood after finding out she's pregnant and thinking about getting an abortion. And I think it's a very, very like humanistic and sort of comedic and awkward look at having to make that decision. And my last pick in my series of the best movies of 2014.
Part one
is Force Majeure.
This is on my list. I think it's on Hulu right now.
Yes, you have to watch it.
Yeah.
So there's a remake that's coming out with Julie Louis-Dreyfus and
Steve Carell, right?
No, Will Ferrell.
Will Ferrell, okay.
And I just, after you watch this, we can talk about it. But I don't think the tone and the intent of the original movie will be captured by this remake, because I think it's gonna go too much on the comedy side. Basically, the movie is about this family who's vacationing in the Swiss Alps at some like ski resort, and then an avalanche happens. And as a consequence of this avalanche, it kind of creates these cracks in the family relationship. And it's pretty sad, but it's also very funny and a very unique movie.
Yeah, so I've been meaning to watch that. That's definitely one of the top must-watch movies on my list right now.
All right, now it's your turn.
All right. Turning from 2014 to 1946, we've got a whole slew of films. This is the first year after the war, so film noir becomes like a big deal. And I've got one of the all-time best film noirs ever called Gilda, starring Rita Hayworth and Glenn Ford. It's also one of my all-time favorite movies. Glenn Ford plays a shady gambler who is picked up in an alley while playing craps by a mysterious stranger. And he later finds out that the stranger's new wife is his old flame. And a whole bunch of stuff ensues after that, including some stuff with some ex-Nazis, and it's set in South America. And Rita Hayworth in this movie is, I mean, I don't even know what to say. Like, I was in love with her. She's incandescent. She's sultry. She's sexy. If you want to fall in love, yes, definitely Gilda. For sure.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I was considering recommending that like a couple weeks ago, but didn't get around to it. My next pick is The Best Years of Our Lives, which also won Best Picture that year. And it is the story of 3 vets who return home to find that the glory of service isn't always welcome after the war. And it's cynical, but it does have sort of an uplifting message at the end, but it's not what you would expect from Hollywood in 1946 in the story about returning veterans. I mean, they struggle with unemployment, the breakdown of marriages, PTSD, and it's a fantastic movie. And it's directed by William Wyler, and I think he won Best Director for this movie as well. And it has some great performances by Myrna Loy, who is usually like a queen of comedy, but she has a great dramatic performance here. Frederick March, Dana Andrews, Teresa Wright. And yeah, I love that movie. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I haven't, but yeah, I mean, I would be surprised to see something like that in 1946.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's still a studio movie, but along with Gilda and my next pick, you can kind of see sort of the turning, how things are turning dark. And my next pick is The Strange Loves of Martha Ivers, and it's a noir classic. It stars Barbara Stanwyck, Van Heflin, Elizabeth Scott, and a very young Kirk Douglas in one of his earliest film roles where he's a lead. And it's a story of sort of this woman who commits a murder as a child and the men who love her and her sort of descent into craziness.
Wow. That I feel like I bet that movie was an inspiration for a lot of stuff I've seen, or for filmmakers that have.
Martha Ivers?
Yeah, because I feel like I've seen elements of that played out in more modern movies.
But it's a good one. And then my next pick, I mean, at the time, I guess they would have called it a woman's picture. It stars Joan Crawford and John Garfield, who is one of the most underrated, if not forgotten, sadly forgotten actors of the 40s, in a story about a young guy. He's poor and his mother buys him a violin. He is a prodigy and rises to the top of his profession with the help of a patron played by Joan Crawford. A love affair ensues. She's older than him, and then tragedy. But it's beautiful, and it's one of those 40s dramas that everyone should see, especially if you love classic movies and tearjerkers.
Sounds sad.
I don't think you would like it, honestly. I don't. Out of all of these, I was like, no. The one that you might like the best, though, is my final pick, and it's called The Stranger, and it stars Orson Welles as an ex-Nazi living under a false identity in America, and his identity is discovered, and it's sort of the steps that he has to take to not be found out by the FBI. And I think we always think of Orson Welles in terms of Citizen Kane, forgetting that he's a really good actor, and it was in a lot of other movies before he kind of became a caricature of himself later in life. And this is one of those movies.
All right. Yeah, that does sound interesting.
So those are my picks from 1946.
Great. Well, join us next time when I will continue with part 2 of my 3-part series of the best films of 2014.
And I'll probably pick another year.
Another old year.
Another old year.
You've been listening to 2 for the Matinee Special Picks.
Bye.